You know, a lot of times in shoes as well as in cars, sometimes the next model year up from a car or a shoe is just, you know, little cosmetic changes here and there. There's not a lot different. In the Nike Alphafly 3 coming from the Next Percent 2, the 3s are definitely their own shoe. They are super unique. A lot of pros, a lot of cons. A lot of people are going to love them. I think some are really going to find them a little bit difficult. But like I said, super unique even from the Next Percent 2s. So let's get into it. Now, starting off in the uppers, the Next Percent 3s, the first thing I noticed in them was how much more of an enjoyable experience it was to get them on and lace them up versus the Next Percent 2s. The Next Percent 2s, my foot, which is pretty high volume, was literally tearing at the uppers. I could hear it tearing as it was coming through. These ones, a lot more accommodating to a lot more foot types and a lot more comfortable. But if you look at the uppers on the microscope, you can see you've got TPU weaves, then you also have, those are the major strands that are woven. Then the minor strands are actually melded together pieces of TPU. So it actually creates a little bit of a stronger construct going all the way through the uppers. So that's basically what's the containing element throughout the entire uppers. Yeah, the lace line is reinforced. However, the lace line in these is more of an integrated lace eyelet. I think they call it notched lace eyelets, but it's kind of the same in the Vapor line from their tennis line, whereas, you know, the laces interact a lot more with the uppers to give you just a little bit of a better lockdown, especially coming from the 2s. Now, the ankle collar is padded, a little bit more padded than predecessors and some other Nike running shoes out there. So honestly, the heel slippage in these really improved from some other Nike's more elite running shoes. And there's some backing here with fabric in the heel, as well as backing here in the forefoot, just to kind of seal the shoe up a little bit more. The heel counter is internal, but it is pretty darn flexible in these things. Now, speaking of all that, if you look at this thing on the breathability test, that was the interesting part. They still heated up 100.2 degrees. We've seen some of Nike shoes with these really open weaves with TPU come in well under 100 degrees. I noticed though on the breathability mapping of them, just like all the other ones, I mean, fog is just blowing out of everywhere. The thing I noticed where it was holding on to heat was the removable insole in these ones. So I think that is where all the heat trapping was coming from. And I did notice this one kind of had an abnormally large amount of glue on it. So that might have just been a manufacturing issue. The reason that was holding on to all the heat on this one, the one that you have might not hold on to the heat of this one. But if it is the insole that's the issue, honestly, you can just swap this out for something else and that's a little bit better with heat and you should be just fine. They still are incredibly, you know, good breathing shoes. Now you look at this on the upper durability test though, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. Honestly, yeah, I mean, the burr, these are road running shoes, right? You're not going to get through brush. So, I mean, the burr does get through that first layer, but it does not get anywhere near the backing of these. So, I think the point I'm trying to make more with the upper durability test on these things is that the heel containing element with that fabric in there in the forefoot is just enough to kind of house your foot to more blunt containment, kind of, you know, it's not allowing your toes and more importantly, your toenails to toggle around a lot. And so is that going to prevent a little bit more runner's toe or tennis toe or, you know, bloody toenails? Maybe, or is it just not going to happen until maybe like, you know, mile 18 versus maybe mile 12? I think it's a small tweak, but I do think it's going to make a little bit of a difference. But getting into the midsole teardown, there are some things about these that are pretty reminiscent of, you know, other Nike Super shoes, but other things on this, it really changed up. Now, number one, the fly plate on these was much easier to get through than previous models. I basically made one scour on it and then crack and it was open versus other ones where I'm sitting there for just forever. I know on some of the New Balance ones I've done with that Energy Arc, I mean, I'm down here for 15, 20 minutes just trying to get that open with the box cutter, whereas this one just opened up right away. Now, the thing is, Nike says it's broader, it's a little bit wider there, so there's more load sharing, and it's a continuous bed of ZoomX foam underneath that fly plate. So basically, it's the same thing as having a full-length tread pattern on something like a court shoe. So there's just a lot more ZoomX foam, versus on the previous model where the rear foot and the forefoot were separated in the middle, you had the fly plate kind of bending and snapping. There's some pros and cons to that, which we'll get to when we get to the runability of this and best gait patterns. But suffice to say, it's more the ZoomX foam that's protecting the fly plate in this one. You still have the Zoom AirPods in the forefoot, which, you know, always feel amazing for sure. If you look at this setup on the bounce height test, got 43 centimeters in the rear foot, then no shocker, 46 in the forefoot. I actually couldn't do it too far back on these because of the geometry in the midsole. It's cut out so much in the rear foot. It just really just tapers back there, which obviously has a lot of implications for runability. But really, you know, the most violent movement you're gonna get these, the most violent bounce and launch is gonna be from the midfoot on. And that midsole construct obviously brings us right into the outsole. Now on the rear foot, you have these two landing pads here. Obviously the lateral one is solid rubber because that's where you're gonna land. If you're a heel striker, you're not gonna land immediately. And if you are, you've got other problems. But then in the midfoot, really, you know, until you get to the distal midfoot, it is just ZoomX foam. Then you get basically what is a continuous tread pod here. It does have a tread bridge here in the middle, which kind of connects the two Zoom Air units. And you got these two circular landing pads here right at the ball of your foot. Now the durometer of these are interesting. The rear foot only comes in at 11. The black rubber on the forefoot comes in at a 12. And then the Zoom Air pods, you know, right with that, you know, the circular tread underneath those Zoom Air pods comes in at a 15. So obviously this, you know, that's where Nike wants you to strike these. However, it's all pretty soft rubber. You look at it on the viewing box underneath of it, that rubber is melding into the ground pretty good, and that does have a lot of implications for runability, which, like I said, we'll talk about. But when you have soft rubber like that, yeah, it's gonna grab the ground pretty nice, and because of the tread on this, it does transition step very easily, even on a pretty hot day, pretty hot pavement, if you're the right striker for them, like I said, which we'll get into. But you look at this on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. I mean, the burr is just working through every single piece of tread on this, even, you know, even the higher durometer tread on this. But like we saw on the tread box, like I said, it is meant to be a little bit more of an interactive tread. And this shoe is meant for more elite racers that aren't spending a lot of time on the ground. Not someone like me, someone like, you know, Kipchoge. So that's kind of where you're getting with this. And that kind of brings me right into the speed ratio, which I find is absolutely nuts in these. Now these things come in at a 5.59 and a shank score of 0.4, bumps these things up to a 5.99, round that up to a 6. So these are definitely like the fastest shoes we have seen for sure, and that's because of the weight reduction of the ZoomX foam. You know, I've done videos comparing ZoomX foam to other thermoplastics, and it's not even close how much lighter ZoomX foam is. And that really does, you know, translate into how fast these things feel. There's definitely a caveat to that though, in terms of who is putting their foot into this shoe and who can actually utilize that weight reduction and speed capabilities, because it's definitely not every runner. And just a quick note on the grip test ramp, these things, just like literally every other super shoe out there, slipped at 43 degrees. I swear these companies are in cahoots with each other in terms of how gripping their rubber is, because all these super shoes kind of have the exact same grip profile, but it's right up to par with everything else, kind of industry standard. But by far, not even close, my favorite part of the Alphafly Next% 3s was their fit. These things were so much easier to get on and to run in versus predecessors, versus other Nike running shoes. They come in pretty standard length, but their width is actually pretty darn forgiving. And you look at them, they look like they are pretty narrow shoes, especially in the midfoot. And kind of they are, but the usable space in them, it is a lot more in these. The shoe relies on the strength of this weave in the upper, right? So not only are they easier to get on and they lock down better, but they're also much more forgiving for more foot types. So a narrow medium foot, you can just go true to size, you can lock them down. A 2E, if you want to try to break these in your standard size, I was able to, just because of how accommodating the shoe is. Yeah, it might be a little bit annoying for a little bit, but I was able to break these in, make them pretty comfortable after not a long period of time. And really that kind of brings me right into the snake bitten foot, because honestly, these are very hard to accommodate in orthotic. Unless you are getting a razor thin custom orthotic put in these, it's gonna be pretty hard to fit one in here without introducing some heel slipping and kind of not getting the intimate contact around your foot. So, you know, for ball of foot pain, you know, the Zoom Air units are good. The thing is though, is for a hypermobile flat foot, anybody really with instability in these, even though the forefoot is more generous, the shoe in and of itself still is, you know, it's a racing shoe, right? It's meant to be streamlined. It's not meant to be a stability focused shoe. So I would say if you're a forefoot striker and you're a lightweight runner, they're pretty good on their own. Anybody with any heft to them though, like heavier runners like me, honestly, at times I felt like I was starting to bottom through the midfoot of this shoe, kind of right proximal to the Zoom Air or just distal to the Zoom Air. You can actually see it by just the wear pattern on this shoe, kind of where I was really starting to crush that Zoom X. Remember, Zoom X is super light, but it's also super light, right? It can only handle so much. So I'd say lighter runners, distal midfoot to forefoot strikers are gonna be okay. Everybody else on these, just remember, it's a racing shoe. It's meant for elite racing. It's not meant to be something therapeutic. And that fit profile brings me just directly into the runability, kind of who are the best runners and strikers for this shoe. Now, the Alphafly Next Percent 2, I honestly liked how the rear foot and the forefoot was set up and kind of that break point there. I thought that it actually transitioned better than you thought it was going to, especially for a midfoot striker, and forefoot. That geometry was really interesting. Whereas in these, because basically, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's a very flat midfoot, right? It doesn't really start arcing up until the forefoot, right? They sit pretty flat on the ground. And then the rear foot, the cutout, it's not even a rocker. Just the cutout in it is crazy. So for a distal midfoot striker and forefoot striker, if you're landing right on the Zoom AirPods, it's great, right? Even more of a proximal midfoot striker, like a dead center midfoot striker, I think they're okay for. Because of the shape of the midsole, it really does lend itself to kind of that pogo stick feeling, right, when you're coming down a little bit more foot flat. In terms of a heel striker though, honestly, to me, forget it. These things do not accept a full traditional gait cycle. Now, number one, because there's that cutout in the heel, it honestly feels like you're gonna lean backwards in the shoe if you're trying to hit the heel. And then if you're hitting it on the landing pad, right, on the lateral side, like you're supposed to on a traditional quote unquote heel striking gait, then it feels like you're trying to climb a mountain, right? There's that little hump right there. And so it almost kind of creates a hitch in your gait. And so even though these are flat outsoled shoes, there's nothing back there to accommodate that kind of gait. And then once you come down, it's really a hard slap from a heel strike, right? So honestly, you gotta stay somewhere around the Zoom Air units to really get any bit of a smooth transition. If you can do that over and over again, and yes, super forgiving shoes for the right person, I think the right body habitus, because if you're a heavier runner like me, I have a very heavy strike. I mean, I'm a heavy dude anyway, I'm a bulky dude, and I have a heavy strike. I just was noticing, like I said, I was just pummeling through these shoes. If you're somebody with a little bit more of a fluid midfoot to forefoot striking gait, then yes, they transition so well up in that forefoot. And because the shoe is lighter, and because that fly plate is thinner, broader, and there's more Zoom X under there, it actually does feel smoother as you go from step to step, right? I can see what Nike's talking about there. It's just that, to me, it's not as rugged as the Alphafly Next Percent 2s, but it's definitely a little bit more of a buttery feeling shoe, and it definitely feels lighter, and it's just leagues more comfortable than the Next Percent 2s. Like I said, it's a racing shoe, right? This is meant for somebody with a pretty tuned gait cycle. It's meant for somebody that really doesn't spend much time on the ground, to be honest, and someone that doesn't need a lot of assistance in terms of those snake bites or in terms of hypermobility in their foot. They don't really have ankle spraining concerns, and they also don't have hyperpronatory concerns, right? That they're not just bottoming and pancaking out through the shoe too. So for the right runner, to me, I do think they are a step up from the Next Percent 2s, but I think for some other people who want more of that rigid feeling from the fly plate, more of that rigid feeling from the shoes, it might actually be something you have to get used to. But like I said, I see where Nike was going with this, trying to make it a little more buttery, a little bit more flowing of a shoe. And I personally just found them, like I said, just much more of a pleasant experience underfoot in terms of the fit and kind of, when I had them for longer mileage on my foot, I wasn't cramping. It was much more of a nice sensation. I really had to pay attention to, more midfoot to forefoot striking with these as soon as I started trying to test them out on a heel striking gait. It was just plain old uncomfortable, to be honest. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Alphafly Next Percent 3s, picking these up versus the new Vaporflies versus the old Alphaflies, or some of the other super shoe models that have been coming out that are just absolutely fantastic. So let me know in the comments down below. And if you do want to see another super shoe that I kind of compare the Vaporflies to, not as buttery smooth, not as slick of a shoe, it doesn't cut through the air as quick as the Alphaflies, but a little bit more protective, maybe a little bit more launch for different foot types. The New Balance Super Comp Elite V4. Make sure you click into this video up above, subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.